Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life. All right, we're back miles apart now. Last week's episode was fun getting to do it in person. Although next time we might need to figure out a better way to make the audio a little more quality, but we winged it and we succeeded with it. So
It
how's it
fun.
feel? How's it feel to be back in Chicago, Allie?
Good, good. It's colder here than it was in New York, which is annoying, but we're trending up, I think.
It's pretty cold here now. Do you have any lessons this week or softball?
Yeah, I'm coaching a few days this week, but tonight nothing. Just boring grocery shopping, workout, adult life.
So I make the cut, huh?
My weekly Chipotle.
All right,
Yeah.
got a question for you. I'm going to ask you, and we'll spend the next half hour talking about it. How important is the order student athlete when you're growing up playing any sport? We'll focus on softball with our experiences, but is it in that order for a reason?
Yeah, and that's a big question to talk about in 30 minutes, but this is an important conversation to have just because I think everyone likes to say student athlete, people joke about it and stuff, but at the end of the day, like that is the most important thing that there is out there is your education. So I just think that's always important to keep in mind, right? You want to be a lifelong learner, you want to put learning first in every aspect of your life, and just, we'll get into this too, but your education will open doors for you that you can't even see yet. So what I mean by that in my recruiting process, schools who may not have looked at me did because of my transcript. So I think that's just something to keep in mind too. It's gonna be a really good addition to the all-around person that you are and help open doors for you.
Nice. How different? Well, I'll start with a couple large questions and we'll see how we dissect them. I have a couple
That's
notes.
that's what you like to do.
Yeah, I'm a macro guy, not a micro guy. Just told my team that the other day. But how important is it to set the stage? Or how different is it? Sorry, I lost my train of thought from that. How different is it how you treat education in high school compared to when you're in college? Or do you go about it the same way? Is the process the same? Is
I
the
think it
focus the same?
depends on the person, to be honest, because I've had friends and other people in my life tell me, "Oh, I didn't really have to try in high school," and then when I got to college, I woke up real fast and realized I was actually gonna have to try. Whereas for me, I was the kid in high school. Oh, I got a 99. Like that was always just me. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask that question, but I've said it before. One of my favorite quotes is, "How you do anything is how you do everything." So for me, it wasn't necessarily a change in focus. It was more of a change in um, probably my strategy of how to be successful because I was now limited on time with more work to do and more responsibility on my plate.
Yeah, but you took a lot of math classes and I mean it could be that way with other disciplines as well too. But what did you realize right away in college about the number not meaning anything necessarily?
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, I was a math major in college. Nerd alert, I know. Double major in econ.
I'll flash that on the bottom, nerd alert.
Yeah, nerd alert, really. In high school I was, high GPA. I get 90s on a lot of stuff, and I remember getting to college and my first quiz I got like a 60. And I called my parents pretty much in tears, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. Like, what's going on?" I'd never gotten that grade ever in my life. And by the time that I graduated, I would call my parents cheering that I got a 60. And what I mean by that is a lot of times in college classes are curved. So as long as 60 was above average, that was an A, which is probably really weird to hear for those of you younger kids listening that are still in high school. I am not telling you it's okay to get a 60. So don't go tell your parents that Allie said that on the podcast, because that's not what I'm saying. But my point is, I learned how to have a broader mindset of perspective and say, hey, as long as I'm doing my best, as long as I'm, achieving what I need to achieve, the number doesn't necessarily matter anymore. So that was probably one of the biggest shifts in mindset I had throughout college, was that bigger picture of, hey, let me get through something really hard, let me learn from it, and I have to be okay with not being perfect. And that's something that I struggled with for a long time.
Perspective's a big one. Just like I feel when kids get signed to go to college, they think the hard part's over, right? And it's only beginning, depending what you want out of it, which is, I assume, everybody wants the ceiling. Same with what you're studying, because you go to college, you don't know A, maybe what you want to major in, B, you don't even understand the concept of how important an advisor can be to you, especially if
Yeah.
you're on a
Yeah.
team, and you don't understand the value of internships and trying to balance all that other stuff that you simply don't have to do in high school.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think
tell us
I
a little bit
think
about what you think.
yeah, I think too, the thing that I want to talk about is it's important to kind of teach yourself time management, how to study, which seems so weird to say, but how to study effectively while you're still in high school, so that when you get to college, things are going to be different, so that you know what works for me, right? And or what works for you, and what works for you may not work for me, and may not work for your friend, may not work for so and so. But funny example, I got to college and I was always, oh, I'm gonna make note cards for everything. Because in high school you get like 50 vocab words and that's your quiz. I started making note cards. I was up till like 1 in the morning making these note cards, and I'm like, Allie, what are you doing? These aren't even helpful anymore. So I had to learn how to pivot and adjust with the dang note cards. But it was just like, okay, I don't necessarily know if I need this anymore. And one of the most valuable pieces of information I've gotten in the last year is you almost have to do an audit with yourself, which means like a self-reflection, self-check every month or so, and say, with every single task that you do in your life, is this helping me anymore, or am I just doing it because I've always done it? Is this still adding value to what I'm doing, or do I just like to do it? For example, some people when they read, they like to highlight words. But then I left some people highlight the whole page. So now it's like, is that adding value anymore? Or are you just highlighting because you've always done it?
And if you're highlighting it, then you don't need the light on because it'll glow in the dark, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Golf, I played college golf 100 years ago. It's a lot like softball where all the trips were weekend trips. I mean,
Mhm.
not once you get in season, you have midweek. We didn't have that, but I know I studied my tail off like Sunday through Wednesday or Sunday through Thursday and did all my work and got ahead of the game. And then I didn't bring a lot with me on the weekend. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not possible. But that's a type of study, and I personally never did in high school. Like
Yeah,
you'd cram till Sunday night, or
yeah.
you can't. I don't think you can get away long term as a long term game to procrastinate like you probably could in high school.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You have to be much more proactive with your time in college. I remember my freshman year when I got to Binghamton, immediately I realized how many athletes or just how many students in general had tutors. And I feel like in high school that's just something that you don't do. Like if you have a tutor, that's just not a good look. But my sophomore year, I was getting tutors in my classes before I even started them. Because now it's, hey, let me create a relationship with you so that when and if and when, because it will happen, I start to struggle in one of my classes, I have someone who's going to help me. It's just that thought process shift of, I'm going to be proactive and not care what other people think because I'm going to do what's best for me and for my education.
That's really cool. You can use the sport you play in college as a platform to get other things. Like you might have first dibs on tutors, right?
Mhm.
You might get to sign up for classes before somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, you might have more access to professors, maybe.
Mhm.
So how important is that to set yourself up and use your sport as an advantage to maybe obtain help versus just saying, oh, I'm an athlete, I'm just going to hang out with other athletes and everything's going to be okay.
To be honest, I don't even think it has to do with being an athlete. I think anybody should utilize any and every opportunity that your school gives you. I mean, I know in college we had writing centers, we had resume aids and help, we had public speech trainings, we had group tutoring, we had just fun classes you could take if you wanted. And to me, it's like, what time again in your life are you ever going to have access to things like that? But the problem with that is people like to say, oh, well, that's not the cool thing to do. Why are you doing that? Right? You're only a freshman, you're only a sophomore. Why are you going to a public speech class on a Wednesday night? That's lame. You're lame. To me, I'm like, I don't think being a good public speaker is lame. I don't think that being in a leadership academy is lame. I remember my freshman year, I was in a leadership academy at school, and some of my friends, or all of the people in it, none of them were student athletes. And it was something I went to every week, something that allowed me to network, something that was totally different from what any of my teammates were doing. And I think that was one of those valuable things I could have done my freshman year, because it really allowed me to, one, meet other people, get perspective from other freshmen coming into the university who were new to it just like I was. And my team and all my friends were really supportive of that. But my point is, no matter whether you play a sport or whether you're going into college not as an athlete, you have to get involved in something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, because that's how you're going to grow. I mean, you go to college and there's going to be 100 different clubs you could join. Pick one. When are you ever going to have access to anything like that in your life ever again?
You know, you've used the word perspective several times, and I think it's important to know you're around, if you're on a sports team. I mean, that's kind of some of the basis of this podcast in softball. You're on a sports team, you're all competing towards the same type of goals, you're all going to lift together, you're all have limited time sometimes, and you don't have the perspective of what it's like to not be an athlete. You don't have the perspective of maybe meeting other people that you can find valuable and you can add value to. How important is it to jump outside your comfort zone, like you just said, and meet people that aren't on your team?
I think it's super important. I
Nothing
mean,
against your team. I
no,
don't
no,
mean
no,
that.
no. But I think, it's like anything else in your life. You have your close circle of friends, but sometimes you need a minute, right? When you live with them, you play with them, you do everything with them. It's good to kind of have someone else who's not in that as deep as you are to just talk about anything else. Sometimes, when you're in student athlete in college, you forget you have a life. Sometimes, so it's good for them to say, "Hey, how are you doing with this? Oh my gosh, let's go study together. Let's go do this." And I still have really close friends from college who had nothing, they didn't even know where the softball field was on campus. And that was one of those valuable things ever. And I still talk to them to this day, because I'm not going to be an athlete forever. So, what reason is it for me to not connect with other people on my campus who have other similar interests like myself?
when when you're stretched for time, like you said, and you said you joined a, what was it, a leadership, what was it, council?
Academy or something like that.
Academy. Sorry, I'm your dad, I should have
Yeah.
known that. uh, do you have time for internships? Do you have time to attend career fairs? Do you have time to research things off campus, like, or do you just have to find time?
You make time for things that are important to you. I think that's a huge thing, especially in college, but as you get older, it's never going to be easy, right? I could say for a dozen of things, oh, I don't have time. I think the right excuse is I don't want to make time because that's not important to me. I I almost wish people would say that instead of, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time, right? You ever text a friend and they don't get back to you for 2 weeks? Oh, I was busy. No, you saw my message, got sidetracked with something else, and then forgot to respond. I'd rather have you say that than say, oh, I got busy for 2 weeks. But anyways,
Yeah,
um,
nonstop,
I
didn't even
think,
sleep.
yeah, I'm like, are you okay? Do you need help? Um, no, but I think it's really important to join things like that because, I've had a lot of people say, Oh, and when you go looking for a job, it definitely helps that you're a student athlete. And I 100% agree with that. A lot of people like, when it says student athlete on your resume, but it's not just because of the words, it's because of they know you have a good work ethic. They know you have time management. They know you're a hard critic on yourself. They know that you know how to overcome adversity and things like that. But what I tell people all the time is that's just not going to get you a job. You can't say, "Oh, I don't have any work experience because I was a student athlete." That's not how it works. You still have to find the time, and it may be harder for you because you have a tough schedule, you're in season, things like that, but you still have to find time to prioritize your education and your future career.
It's like I said earlier, and I'll use it again, it's a wonderful platform to dive into a lot of other things, and it gives you maybe advantages that you're looking for, but you can't use you can't use the athletics part of it as a crutch. I mean, most people can't, but it's a
Yeah.
wonderful platform. I was telling you off air, I have a lot of students from various school districts at the academy I teach at, and we'll go out on class visits. We'll go out on what we call rotations. They're like
Mhm.
modified internships. And I was with my class one time, and the person said, "Oh, what are you doing next year?" And this is what happened. It started with the first kid. "I'm going to college to play baseball next year." "Well, I'm going to college to play soccer." "Well, I'm going to college to play lacrosse." "Well, I'm just going to college," and didn't even add a major. And it went around the whole way. And not one person said what they were going to minor or major, or even think of
Oh.
doing. So the entrepreneur, he owns several businesses in the area. He goes, "Huh, I hope some of you actually take courses in college because that's what you're going to need." I was fuming at these kids. So I
Yeah.
read all my new classes, the Riot Act, that I feel like people know you're going to school to be a student athlete, and in high school, you're a student athlete. But I think once the average senior is going to high school, they forget the student part of it. They're so enamored by the athlete part. And not only are they about to go into a career where they have to work harder than they've ever imagined working on the field or court or links or whatever,
Mhm.
it's going to be the same thing in the classroom. And if you don't work hard in the classroom, most people really don't care either.
Yeah.
And what are you getting out of it at that point? What's the point?
Exactly. And I think, going off what you just said, it's so important to start thinking about your career from a young age. And I know I sound old saying that because younger me would have been like, yeah, whatever. But as someone who just finished their college career, it flies by. And, athletes talk all the time about getting done playing their sport and grieving the loss of their sport. The best thing I ever did for myself was set up an opportunity outside of my sport after I graduated college because it is hard enough to cut a sport out of your life that you've played for X amount, 15 years. But luckily, when you pour time into your career and your education, you have something else to look forward to, right? What you water grows, and you have to water all different aspects of your life. You can't just, think about your career your senior year and then say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And unfortunately, that's what happens with a lot of people because they're so focused on being an athlete that they forget to water the other aspects of their life. So, and I don't mean like looking at the high school perspective, you don't have to know what you want to do, but you have to try. What I learned from being in your class my senior year, for those of you who don't know, yes, my dad was my teacher for half my day, half the day my senior year, and that's probably why it turned out so crazy. But one thing I learned from him, we would go on rotations all the time in our community to shadow different careers. And it is just as valuable to learn what you don't like as it is to learn what you do. I thought, I wanted to be an actuary for the longest time, which, if you don't know, was a statistician who prices insurance. Again, nerd alert, I understand. But for the longest time, I thought that. And, when I started looking more into the profession, shadowing, I realized, I don't necessarily know if I want to do that. It's totally okay to pivot and adjust what you think you want to do in your career, but you have to take steps to get there. And Dad, I'll let you talk about this, but one thing you always try to do, and you say this in your class, if you come into his class and say, I want to be this when I grow up, he tries to convince you to do something else, but it's to make sure that you really want to do that. And I think more educators need to do that instead of say, oh, you want to be a entrepreneur? That's awesome. Cool. Go do it. Instead, he's like, oh, well, did you think about this with being an entrepreneur? That's kind of tough.
Couple things. I want to get back to
I know I
the
just word
word.
dominant, sorry.
No, that's okay. It'll be my turn now. I wrote some notes, so hopefully I do it in the right order. Uh, no doubt, a student athlete, an athlete works hard, and you have all that time spent, all that discipline towards your sport and your athletic career in college. If you don't water something or have some little seedlings for when you graduate or a plan, you're going to have a huge void in your life where you're not putting any time or energy into anything. And that's dangerous. And I think, you could potentially have some, I mean, I don't want to use the word depression, but you're going to have a tough time adjusting because you don't have anything to fill that void. And
Mhm.
it's super important to have those things in the wings waiting. As far as talking people out of things, lately my kick has been to try to talk kids out of going to college for a year and investing in a brokerage account, $10,000, ignoring it, and now starting college 1 year later. And I don't think that would be a bad thing. But boy, when they're going to school to play a sport, when they already know what their major is going to be, that's okay. It's eye opening. And sometimes kids will say, well, why can't I do both? Well, you can, you know.
Yeah.
As far as talking kids out of career or what they think they want to do, the reason I do that is because if you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you don't even know what's out there yet alone what you want to do. So if I spend a whole year and you want to be an accountant, I'll just use that generic
Yeah.
example. And I throw everything at you the entire year that has other things to do besides accounting, and you still want to be an accountant, then God bless. I mean, that's probably what you're meant to do at that point. But
Mhm.
there's no regrets that way, or no
Yeah.
regrets, as some people say.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because me and my colleague were actually talking about this the other day, how growing up, you have an idea in your head of what you want to do as a job. Half the time, you don't even know what that job is, to be honest. You think you do because you read the description on Google, but day in and day out, you don't really necessarily know what it is. And what my colleague and I were talking about is how there's a lot of people at my job, when you look at their job title, I wouldn't even have known that was a thing growing up. A lot of like people don't even know all the jobs out there. I still don't know all the jobs out there. So that's why you really have to dive into what interests you and what you like and lean into that and use that to kind of carry yourself forward. Use your passions and what you're good at.
Solid point. Do you like being around people or not? Do you like presenting or not? Right? Do you like
Mhm.
getting up early? Do you like staying up half the night? So it's
Yeah.
super important to know who you are before you know what you are going to be.
And I think
And
a
it,
big one is, do you like routine every day or do you like doing something different every day? That's one that was important to me too. Do
that's
you want to have the same responsibilities every day or I don't know. It's crazy.
now as far as your personal journey, not playing softball anymore, has it been rewarding coaching and helping, or could you see yourself not doing that, or is it too soon to know?
I think it just goes back to, you know, and I was thinking about this the other day actually, so it's funny that you asked. When I think about, all I learned in college and all I learned in high school, people say all the time, when am I ever going to use the Pythagorean theorem in real life, right? When am I ever going to use some of the actual skill? You got some? What are you going to say?
You will, before GPSs and phones for yardages in golf.
Fair.
If I hit a ball offline, you technically had to use the Pythagorean theorem if you're off at an angle from the yardage marker in the fairway. You
You
had
know
to go
what? Just
side.
mute yourself the rest of the time. You've lost your talking privilege. Um, what I was gonna say, right, you hear a lot of people in school saying, I don't care about this, when am I ever gonna use this, blah, blah, blah. And what I'll argue with that is when I look back at high school and college, the thing that I feel is most valuable that I learned is how to teach myself complex ideas. So what I mean by that is there were times, and I'm just going to pick college right now as an example. I would walk out of a class not convinced that my professor was actually just speaking English. Like I would walk out and say to myself, Allie, we got some work to do because I have no idea what just happened for those 90 minutes. And I would go and I would sit down and I would figure out a way to teach myself something that I had no idea how to do. And to me now, that is more valuable than anything else because when someone comes to me at work and I'm not sure what they're talking about, I don't panic because I know that I've done it before and I've taught myself a complex idea and I've taught myself how to do something before. And sometimes, and this is a big part of it too, it's not always been on my own. I ask for help, but I know, hey, I can think critically. I can figure out a way, whether it be watching videos online. I would do that in college all the time. Reading out of a textbook, going to friends who have experience with what I'm trying to do. Trying to get a different perspective from someone outside the picture. Hey, how would you study for this if you were in my shoes? What do you think a good way to retain that information would be? Or, hey, you took this class before. Is this important? What should I focus on? So it's just all that of how do I teach myself a complex idea and then be able not only to learn it, but then maybe even explain it to someone else. And I think I don't know if that really answered your question, but when we talk about, doing other things in coaching, the idea is I always felt ready to be a coach. I don't know if ready is the right word, but I know it's something that I wanted to do. So that being said, I'm going to take it and I'm going to figure it out. And that is definitely one of my passions. Like, no, I could not see myself not coaching because the more I do it, the more I love it. And it's fills my bucket. It's my passion and I absolutely love it. And I see myself doing it for a long time. But you have to be able to say, okay, I'm not necessarily comfortable with this yet, but because of everything I've been through in my past, I know that I can get there.
Right. And the reason I ask that is some people can finish playing a sport after college or even after high school. Everybody retires from actively playing. Some can just leave sports in general and fill the void with other interests.
Mhm.
Uh, I know personally, I mean, you're teaching and coaching right now. When I was done playing golf, I coached high school golf, then I coached a local community college golf team. Then you and your older sister Jenna got into sports, so I started going that route. Now I'm still coaching. I just love sport. So I don't almost care what fills the void. It could be if you played traveling horseshoes growing up, then we probably would have had a horseshoe pit in the backyard
Yeah.
and traveled around because I like you said, the complex issues and the problem solving and the adversity and the pursuit of something with no guarantees. And if you're a student athlete and you're focusing on college and after you get out, you have to, again, try to understand what you need to fill that void afterwards. So
Yeah. And I think, side note here, but the last thing I want to touch on when it comes to, education and things like that is for young athletes who are, looking or interested in colleges. I tell girls all the time, make a list of everything that is important to you when you go to college. Make a list of, do I want to be close or far from home? Do I want to drive home or do I want to have to fly home? Does that mean my parents will be at my games? How many people do I want to be in my classes? Do I want like a 20-to-1 teacher ratio? Do I not really care about that? Do I want to be able to walk to class or can I bus to class? Is that okay? Do I need a football team? Do I want to go to football games? XYZ, all of those questions that you probably don't even think about because what that list does, and when you're getting recruited as an athlete, it's really easy when you're seeing people all around you getting recruited and getting a little bit jealous because that's what happens, saying, oh my gosh, they got recruited. When's it my turn? When's this going to happen for me? And a coach reaches out to you, you have to look at your list and be able to say, hey, thank you so much, but you don't offer the major that I'm interested in at your university. And that is so, so important because I think it's really easy to kind of get blinders on and say, oh my gosh, I got a coach reaching out to me. Oh, I'll just change my major. I'll just change what I want to do. Who cares? And I think it's, that list kind of grounds you a little bit. And, my mom and dad helped me with this too. And schools are reaching out to me. They're like, Allie, like, you've told me what your goals are and what you want. I'm not really sure this is a good fit for you. And then I'd get mad at them naturally, right? Because you get mad at your parents instead of mad at the situation that's actually making you mad. That's like the golden rule of being a child. But I think it's just really important to have that list to say, whatever school chooses me, I want to make sure that I choose them too, because it's what's going to be best for my education and my athletic career.
we'll end with that, and we could technically do a whole topic on that.
Mhm.
It's not just the school choosing you; it's you choosing the school.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that's like the last minute of our podcast where we bring that up, but
Yeah.
that's a super important concept. And maybe there's not too much to talk about it. If you have your list and you know who you are and what you want, just remember that it's just as important that you're choosing the school.
Yes, and that being said, when you make this list, know that you're gonna have to compromise on some stuff. So, but even when you make that list, rank which ones of those things are most important to you. Put a ranking 1 out of 10 of what's most important to you. Because I remember growing up, there were things I thought I wanted and things I actually wanted. I remember growing up, I'm like, oh, I want to go south. It'd be so warm, so cool. Then I'm like, oh, I guess like my parents wouldn't really be at a lot of my games, and I guess I wouldn't be close to home or any of my family and my friends. So you think you know what you want, but it's okay to admit that something changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Allie. Being a student athlete's definitely a privilege, and it's
Yeah.
definitely can be fulfilling, and it's definitely hard. It's all the above. And, hopefully you do your best to try to navigate it as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Until next time. Good seeing you.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.